Yep. All right. Sorry about all of these technical difficulties. Every time I try to do multiple cameras, this happens. So, see if we can get it to respond again. I want to welcome those of you who are with us for the first time to Daring Dialogues. I am your host, Shantae Charles. Let's see if we can get this going tonight. I can go back and add a title, but let's see if we can get this going. All right, here we go. Take two. And if you would share this broadcast out. I have 3 phones, and all 3 phones give me problems. Good evening. So my Facebook Live has been holding up well, and my YouTube is fine. It just seems now that the Periscope is cutting off on my first try. So I have to maybe uninstall Periscope and reinstall it again and see if that helps. Right. So again, good evening to each and every one of you. If you're with us for the first time, this is Relationship Wednesday, where we talk all things relationship, whether that be male, female, whether that be friendship, whether that be family relationships, whether that be your relationship with yourself. This is the dialogue. And tonight, we are continuing our talk out of Vindicating the Vixens. And we're taking a look at the life of Ruth, and we are on Ruth chapter 3. And we're going to talk about this so-called scandalous meetup between Ruth and Boaz, because there's been a lot of commentary around it. Some people say, that she shouldn't have been doing that. She had no business doing it. Some people say, well, how else was she going to strike in a meeting with him, because all of the male heirs for their household that would have been doing some kind of negotiation, all of them were dead. So there was no man, so to speak, to speak up for them or to bargain for them. So that's the premise behind Ruth 3. Also, we're going to be in everyday narcissism, yours, mine, and ours. So I want to start here first, because we have been dealing with these myths. We've been dealing with myths that we have believed that are damaging to our relationships with other people, and also damaging to our relationships with ourselves. And those 4 myths were the following. Myth 1, we are responsible for and have the power to control how other people feel and behave. That is a myth. Myth number 2, other people are responsible for and have the power to control the way we feel and behave. That is a myth. Number 3, the needs and wants of other people are more important than our own. That too is a myth. And myth number 4, following the rules is more important than addressing our needs and feelings. And that too is a myth. So let me continue closing out this chapter. And then we're going to be talking tonight about everyday narcissism versus clinical narcissism. And it's a very short chapter. And so after we give that definition, then we're going to move on to vindicating the vixens. And then next week, we will come back to everyday narcissism again. All right. As psychologist Patrick Carnes has noted, neglect can be harder to recover from than incest or physical abuse, precisely because there has been no single big casual incident. Instead, the trauma can be hazy and hard to clearly identify because it is made up of smaller recurring events. And in the case of everyday narcissism, these events are seen as normal by most adults, whereas incest or physical abuse are not seen as normal and indeed are against the law. Let me put for now, because unfortunately we have perverted people in office who would just as soon as decriminalize incest and physical abuse as not. Our normal response to trauma has several aspects. First, our body experiences fear in the limbic part of our brain. When this occurs, the amygdala within the limbic system kicks in, creating a fight, flight, or freeze response. At the same time, our left prefrontal cortex, the thinking, organizing, sequencing, and impulse controlling part of our brain, shuts off. Our survival instincts and emotions are now in charge. Rational thinking is literally not available to us because the rational part of our brain has been temporarily unplugged, or as therapists say, overruled or hijacked. Let me reiterate, if you are having problems with getting on any of these sites, we have YouTube going now. We also have the Facebook page, Daring Dialogue. So if you have an account on Facebook, you can go to the Daring Dialogues page and I'm live there. All right. So if you don't want to get on YouTube or you're having problems with Periscope, you can also watch me live on Daring Dialogues Facebook page. I will say that I do end the YouTube and the Daring Dialogues Facebook page to do questions after the broadcast. All right. This is why when we see that our kitchen curtains are on fire, we automatically start moving toward safety. We don't sit still and thoughtfully analyze the cause of the fire or what possessions to save. Trauma may also impact other parts of our brain. As a result, we may have little or no conscious memory of the cause of the trauma, especially if it occurred in pre-verbal childhood, when we didn't have words to remember or words to explain our experience. Usually, though, our body remembers the sights, sounds, tastes, smells, or other sensory information associated with any trauma. When we later experience a similar sight or sound or taste, our body may automatically get triggered and shift into the trauma response. Suddenly, we will feel or act as if the original trauma is happening right now in the present moment. Our body never forgets. It continues to react to those triggers whenever and wherever they appear until the trauma is healed. A classic case is the war veteran who, while playing with his kids in his own backyard, may hear a car backfire. Because the sound reminds his body of a gunshot, fear kicks in and his amygdala takes over. Without thinking, he begins to dive for cover. Also, this also happens to children who have grown up in the hood. Guilty, because when a car backfired, I remember my first year of college, I was out of the hood and I heard a car backfire. And you know what I immediately did? I ducked and dropped to the ground because I was so used to hearing gunshots and knowing what to do if somebody is shooting. So that's not just a war response. Well, if you consider that um, the what's happening in some neighborhoods is considered a war effort, I guess you could consider that war, but it's not war as we think it. But the same thing does happen. All right. People who have been in environments where there's lots of violence, they have those sort of flashbacks. All right. As we will see, the trauma of everyday narcissism has similar effects on most of us when we re experience or are reminded of painful sights, sounds, smells, and feelings from our childhood. Have you ever had a sudden, strong emotional reaction to a seemingly small incident, comment, or gesture? You yourself may have been surprised by the intensity of your reaction. These intense and abrupt emotional reactions are usually trauma responses from a wound that just got triggered, the result of the EN we were taught as children. So, what is the takeaway? This book is going to help you understand how everyday narcissism manifests itself in your life, and it will teach you how to recognize it and heal it. As a result, you will grow into a life of greater happiness, more fulfilling relationships, less reactivity, greater responses to the people and things that matter to you, and more meaning. You will also learn how to recognize this in others and respond to their everyday narcissism in healthy ways. Best of all, you will begin to understand your life in a whole new way. You will learn to recognize more choices and greater freedom in your life. You'll begin to relax and enjoy your life more. You will begin to rediscover your true self and not your narcissistic one. So, what is the difference between everyday narcissism and classical narcissism? PM Forney writes, when the healthy pursuit of self-interest and self-realization turns into self-absorption, other people can lose their intrinsic value in our eyes and become mere means to the fulfillment of our needs and desires. Put bluntly, there are a lot of people who have confused self-esteem with self-absorption. There is nothing wrong with having a good, healthy self-esteem. If you had taken my coaching course, you would know this, all right? And you would actually know the difference. But self-esteem and self-absorption are not the same. Again, a person who is self-absorbed only uses people as a means to an end for their own need and their own desire. They are not interested in serving people. They are interested in using people to serve their own needs and personal desires. And if you don't serve their needs and their personal desires, they will get rid of you and they will cut you off. And most of us have heard all of the cutoff chatter that's happening, especially in the Christendom world. I find it very ironic that Jesus does not cut off anybody, but we are quick to do so. I find it very ironic that we say that we serve Christ, but yet we continue to operate or say things that have nothing to do with the behavior and attitude of Christ. Christ did not even cut off Judas. And Judas is the one who actually sold him out for money and identified him by kissing him and acting like he was his friend. Like, how devious can you be to go up to somebody and hug them and embrace them as a sign that this is the person who's supposed to be carted off? I haven't seen anybody really do that in 2019. I mean, that's pretty bold to publicly identify the person that you're going to betray by going up to them and embracing them and kissing them as a sign that this is the person you need to come and get. And even in all of that, Jesus knew what he came to do, and Jesus still didn't cut him off. Jesus knew what he was going to do the night before, and he still didn't cut him off. Jesus knew what he was going to do the night before and before that, and he didn't out him to the other disciples who were probably, some of them, were wanting Jesus to call down fire from heaven on other people. So imagine if Jesus had outed Judas in his betrayal spirit to the other disciples. Well, they probably would have beat Judas down before the crucifixion. And what purpose, what good would that have served Christ? But somebody breaks our fingernail and we're just ready to just dismiss them for life. We have to actually think about what we're saying and what we're doing and our behavior towards one another. So it is important to understand the difference between everyday narcissism and what is called clinical narcissism. Clinical narcissism, technically known as narcissistic personality disorder, is a diagnosable mental illness, one of 10 types of personality disorders. Awesome. Well, Sharice, please post it tonight. Please post your wisdom because I will happily share it. All right. The Mayo Clinic offers the following definition of a personality disorder. A personality disorder is a type of mental disorder in which you have a rigid and unhealthy pattern of thinking, functioning, and behaving. A person with a personality disorder has trouble perceiving and relating to situations and to people. This causes significant problems and limitations in relationships, social encounters, work, and school. Now, my Periscope viewers, I'm going to have to turn this off because for some reason it's saying that the phone is going to shut down, but I will be back in 30 seconds. All right. Thank you. I will be back. Stay tuned. And now it doesn't want to. There we go. All right. Please excuse me. Let me see. My Facebook family. I have to start another phone and get my Periscope back up. So thank you all for bearing with me. It's only when I have these great topics does Periscope want to do the most tonight. So let's see if we can get it back going. All right, this should be better. All right, here we are again. Somebody said, ooh wee. All right. Thank you all for bearing with me. So, a personality disorder is a type of mental disorder in which you have a rigid and unhealthy pattern of thinking, functioning, and behaving. Thank you all for sharing this broadcast out again. A person with this disorder has trouble perceiving and relating to situations and to people. This causes significant problems and limitations in relationships, social encounters, work, and school. Personality disorders are divided into 3 groups: anxious, suspicious, and emotional/impulsive. Clinical narcissism is an emotional, impulsive personality disorder. It's connected to the emotions and is connected to the impulse. Everyday narcissism, however, is not a personality disorder and not something that can be diagnosed by a therapist. It's a familiar outcome of being raised by less than perfect parents in a less than perfect society or environment. It is not healthy, yet it is extremely common. In recent years, the words narcissism and narcissistic have become widely used in everyday conversation. In that context, they usually refer to someone who is extremely self-involved and doesn't care about anyone else. People often use the term to refer to a boss, which we have now learned what that word boss means. The etymology of boss is actually means to beat or to be an overseer, as in slavery. This is why I don't use the terminology anymore to describe myself or other people. I used to use it all the time, but when you know better, you do better, right? So it's used to describe a coworker, a manager, a family member, a partner, or a neighbor. This informal adaptation of a clinical term roughly parallels the use of the word depressed. A lot of people use the word depressed when they feel temporarily or situational sadness, hopelessness, or despair. This is a very different state from someone who actually suffers from clinical depression, which is a serious, sometimes chronic, and sometimes life-threatening disorder. Something similar happened in the 1980s and 90s when generous, cooperative people were occasionally labeled codependent in everyday conversation. So let's dig a little bit deeper into clinical narcissism. People with narcissistic personality disorder have a constant, and overwhelming need for attention, and usually for admiration, praise, and validation. These are people that eventually you'll be able to spot because of the fact that they are always demanding your attention. They want your attention for everything they're doing as if you don't have a life. They want you to support every single event they have as if you don't have events of your own to establish and support. I'm not going to call any names, all right? At a social gathering, they dominate the conversation all the time. At work, they seek the highest possible position and regularly insist that their ideas and only their ideas are the best. This is usually the person who will not work with anybody else unless they are leading the project. Clinical narcissists typically exaggerate their accomplishments and talents and genuinely believe their exaggerations. So even if they have mediocre skill, these will be the people that you find taking their mediocre skill and thinking that their mediocre skill is the best of the best. And you cannot convince them or tell them otherwise. They lie often, blatantly, and shamelessly. They have a greatly overblown sense of their own importance and often come across as extremely arrogant. They tend to be bossy, judgmental, perfectionistic, controlling, and power hungry. They have no qualms about exploiting, cheating, or in some cases, destroying other people to get what they want. I would venture to say more of us have experienced people who operate in everyday narcissism than people who are clinically narcissistic because these people will destroy you and not blink an eye. Here is a case scenario. Again, the name of the person has been changed for the example. Georgia lies in a hospital bed only days away from death. Her daughter Clara sits beside her, holding her hand. Her dog Brownie relaxes at the foot of her bed. Georgia says to her daughter, "Have you made all the arrangements for my cremation and burial?" Clara nods and squeezes her mother's hand. "It's all taken care of." "One other thing," she says, "I want Brownie cremated and buried with me." Clara pulls her hand away. "Brownie is still young and healthy. He'll probably live another 6 or 7 years." "No, I love Brownie as much as any human being possibly can. I want my dog cremated and I want you to mix his ashes with mine." Georgia's wishes are not a reflection of everyday narcissism. They are symptoms of narcissistic personality disorder, a serious mental disorder. People with narcissistic personality disorder have a strong need to be right in every situation. They genuinely believe they know and understand everything and that they are never wrong. They also become aggressive when anyone challenges them. This book is not about narcissistic personality disorder. It is about you and I having everyday narcissistic tendencies. Most narcissistic, most clinical narcissists have a strong sense of entitlement. They feel they are owed your constant adulation, attention, and praise. They also feel they deserve to always get their way. Yet they have little or no insight into themselves, or what we call emotional intelligence. They are utterly unable to empathize with someone else or see a situation from that other person's viewpoint. Perhaps most notably, people with narcissistic personality disorder don't realize there's anything wrong with them. In fact, they think that everything about themselves is just right and better than everyone else, and it's everyone else that needs to change. This book is not about people with narcissistic personality disorder. It is about you and I, friends, relatives, partners, co-workers, neighbors. It is about a form of emotional wounding that is as common as headaches and sore throats, yet far more painful and damaging if left unattended. Most of all, it's about healing the wounds of your own everyday narcissism and creating the life you truly long for. So, next week we're going to talk about how it all begins. How does everyday narcissism creep into our childhood experiences? How it all begins. All right. Moving on to our second topic for tonight, vindicating the vixens. If you are a woman in ministry, if you are a businesswoman, if you are a female leader, if you are a believing woman, a woman of faith, I encourage you to pick this book up. The subtopic of vindicating the vixens is revisiting sexualized, vilified, and marginalized women of the Bible. We have gone through and we've already looked at, who did we look at? Rahab, I believe. We've looked at Rahab and we've looked at Tamar. Yeah. We've looked at Tamar, the righteous prostitute. And this is the story of Judah and Tamar, because there's another Tamar in scripture. And then we've also looked at Rahab and her situation. And now we are on Ruth. And we are on Ruth chapter 3. Ruth chapter 3 was our assignment from last week. So I hope you got a chance to read it or you have read it in the past. All right. I seem to know quite a few people with everyday narcissistic characteristics. I must catch the replay. Interesting. Yes. Lord, help us all is right. So let's talk about Ruth chapter 3, the threshing floor controversy. The writer says, during a 3-month stay in southern India, I followed my host family village to village as they sought a bride for my hostess's brother. Each morning, they faithfully read the newspaper for ads placed by families who were seeking to marry their sons and daughters. And yes, arranged marriages still do occur in other countries. This old school Match.com came complete with descriptions of the betrothed schooling, their religious association, and the dowry demands. After finding a couple of possible matches for the brother, the family then arranged meetings. We traveled from home to home where the father, mother, and other family members of the potential bride were introduced. After a short time, the potential bride emerged in her finest clothing, serving tea. She remained quiet and reserved, answering questions politely. Soon after tea, the patriarchs of each respective family left the room to discuss more details. After each visit, a thorough analysis of the experience, the family, the woman, and the benefits ensued. Compatibility and necessity dictated marriage. As we unpack what transpires in chapter 3 of Ruth's scandal, remember that our perspectives on marriage have a 21st century spin. We have reduced love to 12 bridesmaids and groomsmen in most cases, cocktail parties, exotic destinations, and a sweetheart cut rock on the ring finger. We expect candlelight, a bed of roses, a photographer and videographer to capture minute expressions during the romance. Now, sidebar. I don't think I've told very few people whatever happened with my video from my wedding and why I don't have that video. The person, my wedding was videoed, but the person who was supposed to be in charge of, I'll give it to you in just a second, Delosa. The person who was in charge of holding our video until we got back from our honeymoon accidentally recorded porn over our wedding video. Yeah. Just marinate on that. Just think about that. So yeah, our video was destroyed by one of our wedding participants' personal sexual habits. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. What can you do? Back then, 19 years ago, we got married. July will make 19 years. There's nothing you can do about that. Memory gone. Thank God we had a photographer, because that's our record. So be careful who you let be a part of your wedding party, and be careful who you let hold on to things until you get back from your honeymoon. Okay? Lesson learned. The name of the book is Vindicating the Vixens. Revisiting Sexualized, Vilified, and Marginalized Women of the Bible. Oh, and the author is Sandra Glahn, but it is really a compilation of different women theologians who are breaking down women from the Bible. Talk about shameful, embarrassing, and being exposed. Yeah, all three. All three. Yeah, we couldn't do anything with that tape after that. So, just a little sidebar. All right. So, yeah, most of us want to capture all of these expressions and experiences and the romance and everything surrounding a wedding. Many around the globe, however, participate in arranged marriages, often for convenience, strategic alliance between families, inheritance, or necessity, but rarely strictly for love. That is really I would say, more so of an American concept now, to really marry for love and skip over all of these other parts. Perhaps that's probably why the divorce rate is kind of high in America. I'm just saying. Because if you're skipping over alliances between families and understanding that you are marrying into a family, this is important to understand. You're skipping over issues of inheritance. You're skipping over issues of compatibility. I am so thankful to this day, and I still have the recording. I'm trying to figure out how I can get it onto, how I'm going to MP3 it, but I still have a tape recording where my mother and both of my grandmothers sat me down and they began to talk to me about their life with men. Most impactful conversation ever. I'm still feasting on that conversation today. I'm still blessed and encouraged by that conversation today, because they talked to me about compatibility. I had one grandmother who was widowed twice. My other grandmother was married 3 times and divorced 3 times. And then she said she realized that marriage was not for her. And then my mother having children out of wedlock and being married 1 time. So it was a gamut of experiences that they talked to me about. And one of the main things they stressed was the compatibility that you need to have with your partner. Because when you're not feeling them on certain days of the week, or they're not feeling you on certain days of the week, compatibility and purpose will keep you. It will. Knowing who it is that joined you all together, besides their body looks good and they cute and we make cute babies together. So, yeah. There's a lot of things here that people in other countries consider besides the chemistry, besides the physical attraction piece. Although I'm not knocking chemistry and physical attraction, you want that to be there, but don't forget that there are other pieces to consider. Such was Ruth's situation. The next component of Ruth's story opens in dialogue between mother in law and daughter in law. I would love to say that we have a generation of women now that is more prone to listen to older women, but I can't say that. All I'm saying is, I sat the women down in my family and I said, y'all are going to give me some information today. I sat with the women in my family and I took out my own tape recorder and I pressed record and I said, listen, I don't have time for y'all to sugarcoat this or beat around the bush, but I'm pulling on your wisdom today. And I'm so thankful for that because I think that may have been the last time that both of my grandmothers and my mother were all in the same place at the same time. So what they shared with me, their stories, was priceless. Like I can't put a price on that at this point in my life. So Ruth is having a dialogue with her mother-in-law, Naomi. She's having a real talk. All right. Once the latter has established herself through 2 harvest seasons with Boaz workers, Naomi seeks to find permanent security for her in this land that is foreign to her. It's actually one of my favorite verses on marriage, where Naomi says, shall I not find rest for you that it may go well for you? Which to me, when I was studying this, was an indication that marriage is supposed to be rest for the weary. Marriage is not supposed to be another argument center. It's supposed to be rest, and there's supposed to be health that is generated through a godly marriage. Let me stop preaching because I can go on this topic, but I won't do that. All right. So she wants to find her permanent security in this land that is foreign to her. In conversation with Ruth, Naomi goes into great detail about how she and Ruth will begin to move forward in securing her status through their kinsman Boaz. Naomi does not have a conversation with her about how she is going to secure Boaz as her boo. Naomi actually puts the needs of her future generations ahead of her own needs by saying, yes, Boaz is an older man, and by society's standards, it would have been more appropriate for Boaz to pursue Naomi. But Naomi is actually trying to secure future generations. So she says, we're going to secure our future generations through your connection to Boaz. Oh boy. I look forward to seeing more older women helping younger women to secure their future. And not being, how do they call it? Cheetahs? Is that the term? Where the older women are out pursuing the younger men? How about we have some Naomis helping the younger women to secure their future? Yes? No? Maybe so? Or is that too much to ask? All right. Okay. Let me get off of that topic because somebody's going to be mad. All right. So, in conversation with Ruth, Naomi goes into great detail about how they're going to move forward their status by securing Ruth's status. Somebody's going to catch that tomorrow. All right. Naomi offers her instructions. Somebody hashtag instructions, okay, that lie at the heart of why the story of Ruth is sometimes labeled as scandalous. Naomi's plan. Naomi lays out a 5-point plan. And I'm going to be honest with you all. When God sent me to study this book, I followed this 5-point plan. And that's all I can say is it works. Some older women compete with younger women. Precisely. Thank you for saying that because, I didn't want to put it out there, but it is what it is. All right. Naomi was not trying to compete with Ruth for Boaz. She very well could have. Because Boaz was more in her age category than he was in Ruth's. But she didn't do that. Oh, God. Okay. Naomi lays out a 5-point plan in which she tells Ruth, wash therefore and anoint yourself. What? Anoint yourself? You mean I'm not supposed to be waiting on somebody to anoint me for service? Oh. Let me get off this topic. Anoint yourself and put on your cloak and go down to the threshing floor. Yeah, Prophet Jonathan, I'm doing this right here. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. I have a whole seminar on this, by the way. I just don't have time to teach it tonight. All right. So, first, wash, therefore. We know spiritually, we as women of God need to be washing ourselves with the word of God, because that is really what makes us clean. Okay. Anoint yourself. Are you anointed? Can you make sure you are anointed before you go approach a Boaz? Yeah. And put on your cloak and go down to the threshing floor. That means you actually have to put something on, like Christ, right? And go down to the threshing floor. That means that you actually have to take a step. You actually have to put some action into this. But do not make yourself known to the man. And there's a time frame there until he has finished eating and drinking. The eating and drinking part actually represents Boaz's contentment with his work. It represents his contentment with his lot in life. It represents his contentment with his business. Ladies, one of the worst things you can do is get yourself involved with a man of discontent. Because if he is not content in himself, nothing you do is going to really help him in that area. He may be interested in you for a while. You may, how can I put it? You may occupy his time while he is in a discontented state. You may even become the subject of his contentment, which is actually dangerous, by the way. Because the first time that you do something wrong to cause him to be in a state of discontent, he just might take it out on you because you were his sunshine and he put you on a pedestal and you were what made him content, because he's not content within himself. All right. So do not make yourself known to him until he is finished eating and drinking. Boaz was a man who was content with his work. He was content with his work. But when he lies down, observe the place where he lies, then go and uncover his feet and lie down. And he will tell you what to do. So wait until he's done. Wait until he's at a place of contentment in his work. Observe where he is. Go and uncover his feet, which was actually a cultural gesture that meant that you wanted that person to be your covering. Okay, so it was a culturally understood gesture. And lie down, and he will tell you what to do. So even though this on the surface looks like some very strange instructions, culturally, Boaz understood what that meant. That's why when he felt the presence, he actually awakened and felt the presence of someone at his feet, and his feet were uncovered. He knew that whoever it was down there, which he didn't know yet, was asking him to be their covering. This is why he got he was a little uneasy, because most men should be a little uneasy, because who is this asking me to cover them? All right. And that word there, when it says uncover his feet, I looked up the Hebrew for that word feet, because often when we see an English word, sometimes we don't dig a little bit deeper, but there was a deeper meaning there. All right. And the Hebrew word there for feet is strength. When he lies down, observe the place where he lies, then go and uncover his strength. Now, how many women do you know the secret to a man's strength and knows how to uncover it without exposing it? I'll wait. Or are you the young lady who knows what the man's strength is, but you're so busy telling all of your girlfriends, and then when your other girlfriend comes by and scoops him up because you told her what his strength was or where his strength lay, and then you're wondering why you're still not married, that could possibly be part of the issue. But you didn't hear from me, okay? You didn't hear from me. You didn't hear from me. So anyway, Ruth uncovers his strength and lies down and waits for Boaz to wake up. And ladies, you know that can be part of the hardest process, is to know a man's strengths, to know his strengths, and to wait on him to wake up and tell you what to do. I know. This message is not for most 2019 young ladies. I get it. All right. But I'm just telling you what Ruth did that worked. Exactly. Delilah exposed it. Beyonce exploits it. Shondo. Tracy, you over there preaching. All right. So she was able to uncover his feet and lie down and wait until Boaz awakened. Most of us women, some of us know. You might know who it is. You might have observed him. You might have anointed yourself. You might have washed yourself in the word. You might have covered yourself. You might have put on Christ. But you still have to observe where he is, uncover the strength, and wait on him to wake up. She couldn't shake him awake. That's unfortunately what a lot of women are doing. They're just shaking men awake. They're just going around shaking people. Are you my Boaz? Are you my Boaz? Are you my Boaz? Sit down. If you're not sure, please just stop. I'm trying to help somebody today. So let's look at what the writer here has to say about these pieces. All right. Wash and anoint yourself. Let's be honest. No woman would ever dream of meeting a man she hopes to marry, smelling like she just left a YMCA cardio burn class, her hair in disarray, her clothes dripping with sweat. Most of the time, we take time to pull out the lavender body wash, dab some Ralph Lauren behind our ears. Naomi's instructions to bathe and apply perfume are realistic, considering Ruth's labor in the fields. More specifically, these preparations are actions taken by a bride in preparation for a wedding. You want to be treated like a bride, Ruth? Then act like a bride. I'm going to say that one more time. You want to be treated like a bride? Then act like a bride. How does a bride carry herself? You have spent season after season working in the fields. You've been laboring, but now it's time to prepare yourself to be a bride. Lady Tracy says they are shaking men awake and shaking other things too. Right. One more time. You want to be treated like a bride, then act like a bride and prepare yourself like a bride would. Adorn yourself. What does Naomi mean when she tells Ruth to put on her cloak? Would Boaz even notice her clothing, considering she would approach him after dark? Two opinions have emerged. First, many believe that Naomi asked Ruth to adorn wedding attire, symbolizing that Ruth's period of mourning had ceased. Because if you know anything about the culture then, usually if a woman was in mourning, she would be wearing all black or dark colors to signify that she was in mourning. When a woman came out of mourning, she would wear white or she would wear pastel colors. And this is not just biblical times. This is further in his, further up forward in history. All right. So she's telling her to change your garments so he can know visually that you are available. Oh boy. Oh, Jesus. All right. Others also believe Naomi did nothing more than make sure that Ruth took a cloak of sorts with her so as to keep from chilling in the evening air or to somehow obscure her face as she was moving about in the dark. Whether Naomi instructs her to remove her mourning clothes or simply instructs her to bring a garment used by the poor as a blanket for warmth at night, she instructs Ruth to make a statement with her attire. What does your attire say about you? Does your attire say, I'm available for death do us part? Or does your attire say, I'm available for one night stand? Death do us part, one night stand. What does your attire say? What statement are you making? Now, I know we have a culture of people saying that you should not, I don't want to use the word, blank shame, right? But again, the question is, whatever you choose to put on is making a statement. So what is the statement that you're trying to make with your attire? Are you trying to make the statement that you're available for one night? Or are you trying to make the statement that you're available for a lifetime? I'm not going to tell you what statement to make. That's a question you're going to have to answer. All right. Uncover his feet and lie down. Naomi's final two instructions remain the most controversial of all. They're what most bring Ruth's character into question. The Hebrew words in this passage have multiple interpretations. The words to the question are as follows. To uncover, the root of this word can have a sexual understanding. One might throw back a dovet and find the person to be naked underneath. The term is also used as a euphemism for exposing someone's private parts, as seen in Yahweh's law found in Leviticus. The Hebrew noun for foot, regel, can serve as a euphemism for male genitalia. It sometimes appears in narratives in which someone is using the bathroom. Interestingly, however, Naomi's command does not include this term, but margelo, which means place of the feet or strength. To lie, the verb meaning to lie here is often used to denote sexual relations, as in the case of Jacob and Leah. The common phrases for sexual intercourse, however, tend to be he lay with her, he went into her, or he knew her, as can be seen in the final chapter of Ruth's story, when intercourse actually occurs in Ruth 4 and 13. The mystery surrounding these commands should be obvious. Their possible double meaning can raise a question. What exactly did Naomi intend for Ruth to do? Naomi's instructions exude longing for her season of calamity to be over, and some interpret her actions as a delicate yet dangerous scheme charged with sexual overtone. But before we explore the possible interpretations, let's follow Ruth as she walks in obedience to the threshing floor. What will Boaz do? Ruth courageously ventures into the night. She weaves her way through Bethlehem, finally reaching the threshing floor. She waits and watches for Boaz to finish his evening meal and drink and lie down for the night. Perhaps she may have hidden behind a pile of grain, waiting for the right moment. Biblical scholar Ron Allen speaks of her quest. What a powerful act of faith it was, that journey into darkness. The reward would be great, but Ruth had no way of knowing that yet. She only felt the risk. As Boaz drifted off, Ruth quietly emerged and uncovered his feet as Naomi instructed. As anyone would do in the middle of the night when suddenly awakened, Boaz asked, "Who are you?" Notice Boaz's response. Hats off for Boaz, because he wasn't like, "Hey girl, let's get it." He actually had enough sense to say, who is this? Ruth responded with, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer." Ruth was ready. She was like, "Cover me." In these two sentences, she makes a shift from her mother in law's commands and begins to take the matter into her own hands. Rather than waiting for Boaz to speak first and explain the next course of action, as Naomi had said, Ruth makes a bold move. Her direct request for protection and security has left no question in Boaz's mind of why she is there. She has not come to be a one night stand. She has come for the ever after, to death do us part. She was very clear. Carolyn Custis James writes, Ruth's boldness jars the respectable Boaz out of his religious comfort zone and leads him to a more radical, self-sacrificing life of faith, a life that breaks the rules of conventional religion, just as Christ, their descendant, will do generations later. While her respect for Naomi remains, Ruth's understanding of Yahweh's Yah shines. She asked Boaz to fulfill the covenant obligation to the family of Elimelech by naming him with his rightful title, Goel, or Redeemer. Daniel Block observes Naomi identifies Boaz as the kinsman obligated to perform redemption duties for a widow, Ruth. She classifies him as one qualified to fulfill the role. Not only does Ruth name Boaz as her Goel, but she also reminds him of his own prayer for her to find blessing under Yahweh's wings. Remember, Boaz, remember you prayed that I would find refuge under the wings of whom I had came to trust. You remember that prayer? Well, guess who can fulfill it? You, buddy. Ruth intentionally points out Boaz as the very one capable of conveying this aspect of God's love. Husbands are an aspect of God's shelter, for under their wings, wives come to trust. Interpreting Ruth's actions, and we're going to have to stop here, all right? Boaz has two possible interpretations for Ruth's actions, either to view her as making a sexual advance like a common prostitute, or acting in virtuous obedience. Which would he choose? Naomi's instructions came with great risk that Ruth would be mistaken for a prostitute, considering the time of day, Boaz's full day of field labor, and his full belly. Naomi chose to send Ruth to confront Boaz at the threshing floor in the darkness of night rather than in a public arena during the day. Scholar Harry Harm writes, night is considered to be a time for unrighteous deeds. The prophet Hosea even links threshing floors with forbidden sexual escapades in Hosea 9 and 1. Would Boaz be coherent enough to interpret her actions as virtuous? Jewish scholar Haim Kurtak thinks not. He observes, except for Joseph, no other biblical man of valor occurs who is a champion of sexual restraint. What does Naomi hope will happen? Likewise, Schwab takes this interpretation to an erotic level, saying, how far up his legs was Naomi counseling the oiled and alluring Ruth to uncover? An overtly sexual interpretation of Naomi's directions seems to read far more into the text than is actually intended, despite scholars' attempts to find symbolic impregnation even in her return home at the end of the night. First, there is no suggestion in Naomi's tone or intention that either verb used, to uncover or to lie, be interpreted solely sexually. No matter how depressed Naomi might have been, it is unlikely that she would have encouraged her daughter in law to an immoral act. As a reminder, marriage customs were different in the ancient Near East. Courtship, dating, living together, none of these options existed. Parents arranged each component of the union. In the case of Ruth, her parents lived far away in Moab, and Boaz's parents were most likely deceased. Although Naomi's instructions seem oddly dangerous, her actions could simply be interpreted as that of a mother arranging a marriage for her daughter. While trying to understand the term foot and its proper meaning, a better clue can be found if we look at the only other place outside this context where it is used. In Daniel 10 and 6, in this passage, the term is described to be the actual arms and legs of the statue Daniel sees in a vision. The term foot or margalo references the limbs of the statue. Block concludes, accordingly, it seems Naomi is advising Ruth to uncover Boaz's lower limbs, probably exclusive of his genitals, and then go lie down herself. Moreover, uncovering Boaz's legs in the middle of the night would likely cause him to become cold and awaken on his own. While Naomi's instructions seem to place Ruth in a precarious situation, we must remember her state of mind and desperate need to provide long-range security for Ruth. All factors included, an entirely sexual advance seems improbable. So, we're going to talk next week about virtuous obedience. What does that actually mean? Obeying instructions that may seem a little unorthodox, because those were some the seemingly unorthodox instructions. Listen, I hope you have enjoyed tonight's dialogue. I've been your host, Shantae Charles. I am actually going to be ending my dialogue on Facebook Live and on YouTube. If you want to join the additional dialogue after that, because we are over time, you can join me at pscp.tv/Life Nation to hear from our live audience on what they think about tonight's dialogue. Please share this broadcast if you think that this message tonight will be beneficial to the hearers in your circles. Take care and God bless.